محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. I welcome you all to this second session of this two-session course on the topic of losing identity. So before I go into my discussion today, I'll very quickly, in few minutes, recap what we did last time. So it's fresh in our minds, and I'm going to connect from where I left the discussion. So first few slides, we'll just quickly go through what we discussed last time. So the main question and the challenge that we have in front of us is living in today's world, which I'm going to term it, and I have been using this word, the modern world. And again, I said this is for reference. You can use different words to signify or denote the same reality which is out there. The modern world, the modern civilization, the Western civilization, there are different names that you can use. And there are two major things that we face in this modern world. One is different ideas, ideologies, modes of thought, different people saying different things, and a certain lifestyle and a certain condition of your society. Of course, it's a very complex thing, and it requires a lot of discussion to even understand what the modern world is. But my main question or concern that I posed was that living in modern world can be really challenging, and especially for the next generation or the younger generation, because they really have no idea what they are getting into. It's not something very easy to understand and decipher, and it can affect us. So I mentioned that it affects us in two ways. One way is that people's identity starts becoming weak, and the worst result that it can lead to is complete loss of identity and iman of that person, his true identity, his true goal, connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All of these things, they easily and completely get forgotten. So we said that in order to understand how modern world affects us and affects our identity, we need to understand how different societies function. So the last session we spent understanding this framework that societies and civilizations are not easy things. It's a complex structure that we have in front of us. So we try to divide it into these four parts so that it's easier for us to understand. So we said every society and every civilization and even the modern world in which we live has a certain worldview, things that it considers real or not real. Do they believe in God or they do not believe in God? Do they believe in metaphysical world? They do not believe. Are they materialists? Do they believe in religion? They don't believe in religion. Which religion do they adhere to? So all these are part of a person's worldview. Even add to that many questions that we have about our own goal. Why am I created? Why am I in this world? What is my goal? Am I created for a purpose, or no, my purpose is just to enjoy and benefit from the material blessings? Do I have a higher goal? Is there life after death? All these questions, whatever answer that society gives forms its worldview. Based on the worldview, you have a moral understanding, and these two are very closely connected. Your understanding and your moral values and your value system can change drastically based on your worldview. So, based on a certain worldview, something might be bad, but based on another worldview, something might be good. And again, I try to give examples. I'll just add one quick example here. For example, hijab, for example, the way Muslims do in today's world. In a certain society, based on their worldview, they might consider hijab to be a very negative value. And it happens in certain societies today that even legally it's banned in universities, for example. Why? Because based on their worldview and their value system, it's not something good for the society. It's something detrimental, it's negative, people look down on that. But if you change your worldview, hijab can become a very positive value. So you come in Islamic worldview, things change to a good extent, and now you have this thing has a positive value. And again, this is a small example, and there are many examples you can give. But these two things, worldview and values, are not seen. You can't see. It's not written on somebody's face. It's not even clear in that society what their worldview is. You have to read about it, you have to find out. But what is seen in a society are these two things. One is their social system. So, the country in which you live, I'm sure you're aware of what political system it has, what type of party system, different players in politics, what kind of economy it has, what kind of educational system it has, what kind of media system it has, and. So, all these social systems is your day to day functioning of the society. So, that is also a very important part of any society. And every society produces certain attractions and symbols which they produce to attract other societies towards them. And it happens today a lot in the modern world. Modern world today produces a piece of technology and the whole world is attracted to it. Okay, you can give very specific and tangible examples. Apple creates its new revolutionary phone, which has some very amazing and new features. So it's their technology. What happens is that in one single day, millions of people from around the world are going to buy that phone. Why? Because it's so attractive, it's so amazing, right? Why do people buy expensive phones? Not because they have just a lot of money to spend, no, because it's very attractive. So every society and the modern world is composed of these four parts. And then the important point that I made last time was that, believe me, societies are very, very powerful. They can affect you, they can shape your identity completely. And what's important to note is that this identity formation or change happens very subtly and subconsciously many times. And the worst form it can take is that it can shake the very foundations of that person's Islamic worldview and ideology. And that person might end up losing his iman. And we have cases of people who were affected in this manner and they lost their identity, their true identity as human beings, as servants of Allah, as people who should be getting close to Allah. They completely missed it and they ended up in another track. So this is what something we need to be careful and understand. Okay, so the process I explained, and this I think was the most important and key point, and I want to emphasize on that the change starts not from our worldview. When you're living in a society, that society is not going to come and tell you that change your worldview, don't believe in God. So you live in a society where the society as a whole, the majority of the people or the dominant trend doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in religion. You live in that society, day one, they're not going to come and tell you that, hey, look, why do you believe in God? Come, become a non believer in God and become like us. No, it doesn't happen like that. What's going to happen is that living in that society, the first thing that's going to be affected is that person's behavior and lifestyle. Why? Because he's surrounded by their attraction. So therefore I showed this slide, and this was very important, that when you're surrounded by a certain type of attractions and certain type of social systems, those things, they encourage you day and night to acquire their lifestyle. And I think you can feel this, right, in your own society. You're surrounded by a certain type of attractions, the technology, the media, the books, the role models that are there. All of these, they invite you towards a certain lifestyle. And in today's terminology, it's called the Western lifestyle or the liberal lifestyle. You can use any name. And then let me take you back to the previous slide. When our behavior changes slowly and gradually, because of that attraction that's around us, our values start changing. And this change in values is a very subtle process. Sometimes I don't even realize myself that my values have changed. Yes, maybe I profess something on my tongue. I said, no, this is not my value. But in my heart, because values is to do with my heart, it's the love and the hatred of the heart. And love and hatred sometimes can be very different from what I say on my tongue. I might say that I love this, while in my heart, deep down, I might be disliking that thing. So, and this is a gradual process that eventually might lead to people changing their worldview. So, you might see these cases that This person comes and says that, oh, I don't believe in God. Then it creates an issue. It creates a, like, it comes out as an explosion. Or some people, their values completely change. Instead of adhering to the values of taqwa, piety, spirituality, now money becomes their ultimate value in their life. Every single day when they wake up, their main attraction and value for them becomes money and the other material pleasures. And all of this can happen to us as well. Again, this course is not to point fingers at others. It's for us to understand how the modern world can possibly affect me, and how it can possibly affect my community and my next generation. And inshallah, what are the practical ways of saving this? So then again, I gave many, many examples of different attractions that are surrounding you. I'm not going to go through it. The slides were shared with you on the website, so you can, if you want, you can go back and look at it. So I stopped here and say that, okay, enough of problems and what's happening with us. What we need really, really, that can help us is practical solutions, right? Because you can go and talking about theoretical discussions about society and sociology and psychology and so many other things, and they're important. I'm not denying their importance. I did my first session, my entire first session was a theory discussion trying to analyze what's happening to us, but that theory is there so that we can come to the practical solution. So that's what we are going to do today. Solution is one thing, one word in fact, and that is Islam. Islam as a religion, as the ultimate way of life prescribed by God for the mankind, is the solution to everything that we face in our lives. Be it something you face in your individual personal life that no one knows. There's some problem, there's some issue you're facing. If you're looking for a long term, sustainable, true, ultimate solution, please refer to Islam. It will help you. Of course, we also benefit from any other knowledge, because Islam tells us that if there's any other beneficial knowledge, we should definitely go for that and benefit from that. But in many key places, if you want a good, sustainable, real, original solution, we'll have to refer to Islam. So we are going to look at some of the solutions and what Islam has to offer to the society. So let's come and very briefly look at. So this was my introduction, and we did a brief review. I'm entering my second part of my discussion, but I'm going to very briefly talk about how Islam, as the final religion revealed by God, can give us solutions at all different levels: individual level, family level, doing tarbiyah of our children, relationship between husband and wife, taken take it to even more complex issues like community issues, to your own society, to your own country, and the entire humanity. And again, I'm trying to a bit explain this claim, because you might, or it might come to a person's mind that, oh, this is such a big claim. Okay, so let's go into this a bit. So this is going to be second part of my discussion, and it's going to be brief. And then third part of my discussion is going to be very practical solutions that, inshallah, will help us to save our identity. The true identity, and again, I mentioned identity is your perception of your own self, who you are, what's your goal, what's your role in the scheme of things. And it's very important to understand what our true identity is, and more important than that is to not lose that identity, inshallah. So we're going to come to practical solutions. So let me begin with this discussion. So one thing that I want to emphasize here is that when we speak about Islam, we need to ask that, what was the ultimate goal of Islam? Why was Islam sent as the final religion and final message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So I'm just going to summarize it in this sentence, which you can see on your screen. So please pay careful attention. This is a very important part. Islam has come to build a just and virtuous societies. Why am I saying this? Because I want to emphasize this fact that yes, Islam has come for our dunya. And I want to remove this misconception which some people may have, that Islam is to do with akhirat and the dunya and our worldly matters. We are just going to, are supposed to manage on just the way we like it, or just any random manner, or that's whatever that society prefers. No. Islam says that look, there's a close connection between your dunya, your worldly life, and your hereafter. They're not two different things. So when we say that Islam has come for our akhirat, it automatically means that it can only fix our akhirah if it can fix our dunya. Believe me, if someone's dunya and worldly life is messed up, is not going in the right direction, he's not going to get anything in the hereafter. By messed up, I don't mean that he has difficulties. No. Believers also have difficulties. Messed up, I mean a person who's living a life of corruption, of sin, of no limits, and the way we see parts of modern world going without limit, crossing all boundaries. If a person's dunya is messed up, then his akhirah, there's no hope. And these are two sides of one coin. So this is a very important and key point to think about regarding Islam, that look, it's come to fix my dunya. And my dunya means everything, my personal life, my family life. And I'm going to mention that you might say that, oh, it's a big claim. No, it's not a big claim. If you look at the content of Islam, it's the biggest proof that look, it has so much to say for every aspect of your life. And let me just give you a very small example. So people ask that, oh, does Islam have anything to say about child upbringing? People have this question. The answer is, I wish I had that book. I would have shown you that here they have compiled a book where they have collected all the narrations and the verses of the Quran that speak about child upbringing, and their number goes close to 3,000 narrations and ahadith. Oh, that's a big number. If you have 3,000 narrations on a single topic, that means there is a lot of guidance about, for example, child upbringing. How should we, from very specific matters like how do you name your child? What are the adab and etiquettes of naming your child? Take from that to complex matters of how you should do tarbiyah, what are the principles and foundations of tarbiyah. All of that is there in our narration. And this is one example. Any topic that you take and touch, put your finger on, Islam has a lot to say. So this is an important thing that we need. What's the ultimate aim of Islam? And again, I'm not going to read these verses of the Quran because I won't have time and I don't want to prolong it. I'm just going to give you keywords. So these are different verses of the Quran that tell us that look, this is Islam's ultimate aim. Islam has come to end humanity's suffering. And I can speak for an hour regarding this, that in today's modern world, with all the advancements in technology and other counters, humanity is still suffering. There's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of poverty, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of wars going on. And again, let's not forget and let's remember the recent war on Gaza. Defenseless civilians, people being attacked, being bombed. Um, the other day, I was just watching this photo of these 90 some children who were killed recently. So, innocent children, they're just in their homes and they're being bombarded. Look, that's humanity suffering. Why should we have a world where we have to see these kind of crimes against humanity being committed? And then the story is very long. So, Islam says that, look, I want to end this suffering. Another place, Islam says that I have come to establish a just society where everyone gets his right, both materially and spiritually. And then Islam proposes a global aim. It says that I have come to establish a global society with material and spiritual progress for everyone. So remember this, this is a key word. Like this is very important, that Islam has a global aim of giving material and spiritual development and advancement to every single human being. And ultimately, if that happens, then that will ensure true felicity for the eternal life. And this is very key and important, that if our society is not just, if our society is not spiritual, if the society is not pious, then We cannot say that the hereafter everything will be okay and things will be different. No. Hereafter is a reflection of what happens to individuals and societies in this world. If I'm successful in this world, if I'm able to establish connection with Allah in this world, it will reflect in hereafter as paradise. And if God forbid I'm not able to establish that connection with Allah and I fall in this whirlpool of materialism and sins and corruption, then the reflection of that in the hereafter is going to be a divine punishment. It's two sides of one coin. So this is Islam's aim that we have. But wait a minute. See, I'm making big claims, right, about Islam, but you might have this question that can Islam really do it? So I mentioned verses of the Quran. I wish I had time. I would read each one of them. So I'd give an address. So if you can see the previous slide, you can see those. So it's Surah number 7, verse number 157. You can refer to these verses. They're very beautiful. But the question is that, okay, Islam is making these big claims that global society, justice, spirituality for everyone. But can it do it? Can Islam really, really run the society? So let's try to answer this question, and inshallah, I'll come to the practical side of the story. And inshallah, I mentioned last time also that towards the end, I'll leave a few minutes, at least 15 to 20 minutes, for question and answers. So if there's any comments, questions, then definitely you can ask them. And I mentioned last time that if whilst I'm discussing, if there's something that's not clear or there's a question you want to ask or a comment you want to make, please feel free to type in that attendee chat section. So I'm aware that if there's something that I need to take note of. So, and this is a critical question that we need to answer for our own selves. That look, we are Muslims. We are Muslims, and we follow the school of Ahlul Bayt. We are Shias. That's our faith. That's our belief. That's our religion. Question is, can a religion really run the global society? It's a very important question. I'm making a big claim about Islam because, in a very simplistic terms, you can define religion to be a very narrow thing. As it happens in today's modern world as well, right? So in today's modern world, religion and Christianity, because that's the dominant religion of people living in those modern societies or Western societies, Christianity as a religion is given a very small space in that entire society. So Christianity, according to their view, or any other religion for that matter, is only supposed to govern your relationship with God. It's not supposed to enter society. Society, you leave it for us, and let your religion be inside your houses. Now, is that a correct view or opinion or not? That's a separate question that will take us into the question of Islam and secularism, and the relationship between the two. I'm not entering that. But leaving aside what others think, as Muslims, let's ourselves think that can Islam really run a society? It's not an easy thing. Why? Because running a society needs these four things. And that's why I brought this framework. This is really, really important. If you want to run a society, you need to give it a worldview. If you want to run a society, you need to give it values. If you want to run a society, you need to put social systems in place there, right? Societies cannot run without a political system, without an economic system, without a system of education, without media. You can't run a society. Even those older days societies, which were much simpler than today's complex societies, they had all these things. They used to have a political system, they used to have a system of economy, everything. So if you want to run a society, you need social systems. And if you want to run a society, and a virtuous society, a pious society, you need to create attractions. You need to attract others towards your way of life. So this is a critical question, that can Islam provide us all of these? The answer is yes. But the unfortunate side of the story is that as Muslims, we haven't worked on presenting these things to even our own people and for that matter, to the world itself. Many people don't know what Islam's social systems are. We ourselves as Muslims might not even know. So if I ask you, for example, that what is Islam's system of education? If Islam were to come in a society and were to establish a system of education, how would it look like? Would it look like the way we have it today? Would it be different? Maybe most of us, even myself, I might not have clear answers to that. So I'm going to very briefly show you, and I wish we had time. This can definitely become a separate topic whereby we go through the details that look how comprehensive Islamic worldview, values, social systems, and attractions are, that it can run the entire globe in the best and the most just manner. That's my claim. Of course, I wouldn't have time to justify my claim completely, but I'm going to give you a glimpse of what I want to say. So let's go. Islamic worldview. Islam has a complete and correct worldview based on Tawheed. So there's so much that the Holy Quran talks about worldview. So it talks about God, it talks about creation, it talks about angels, it talks about human being, it talks about environment, it talks about society, it talks about afterlife. I can even claim here that more than 40% of the Holy Quran is talking about worldview. What should be your right way of looking at the world, at the universe, at the creation? So Islam has one of the most, and if you add narrations that we have, so again, I don't have time. Others give so many examples. So we just have one book by Sheikh Saduq where he compiles narrations about Tawheed, just about Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Allah, His attributes. I think it's become like a 400 pages fact book. It's there. You can go and search online, a Tawheed of Sheikh Saduq. I'm sure their English translations are available. Of course, it's a very, very, very difficult book. Don't just go open and start reading it. It requires explanation and at times even teacher. But I'm just showing, if you look at narrations, how rich Islamic worldview is. It talks about every single thing that you need to know about the universe, about the creation, about your own self. So Islam has a very comprehensive worldview. Let's go to the next stage. Islamic values, Islamic akhlaq and morality. There are hundreds and thousands of narrations that talk about what are those correct and right Islamic values. I mean, a big part of our Islamic narrations, it talks about akhlaq and spiritual values and how we should have a balanced perspective on Islamic values. So, what are Islamic values? So, again, I don't have time. I'm just going to mention few key features of Islamic value system. So, how does Islamic value system look like? Islamic value system focuses on spirituality and God-centeredness, tawheed. Everything revolves around your connection with Allah, your connection with the most perfect and the absolute being called Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Islamic values are centered on the akhirah, of course, through dunya. So you work in dunya for your eternal life. All the Islamic values are based and focused on akhirah. But Islam doesn't write off material values. We might have misconception regarding this. Some people think that, oh, Islam is only to do with spirituality and we have to leave this dunya completely. No. Islam in fact says that enjoying halal material values is a very, very good and recommended thing in Islam. And you might have misconceptions. Sometimes people think that Islam is only about leaving this dunya, not enjoying this dunya. No, Islam only forbids us from haram dunya, those things which are haram. But if you come to the halal material pleasures, Islam, Allah says, and again, I would have time, I would mention this verse of the Quran. In one of the verses of the Quran, Allah says that وَمَنْ حَرَّمَ زِينَةِ اللَّهِ الَّتِي أَخْرَجَ عَلَى عِبَادِهِ. Who has made haram on themselves these beautiful things of the worldly life that Allah has sent? Then Allah says that these are for the believers. These are for the believers to benefit. The material pleasures that Allah has kept are for believers to benefit. So this briefly describes Islamic value system, and it's very, very detailed. Every single attribute you talk about, Islam speaks about it. Sabr, shukr, taslim, tawakkul, hundreds and hundreds of attributes and values that Islam lays emphasis on. Islamic, okay, so one example I want to give here is the example of taqwa. So, taqwa is a value in Islamic value system. And it's a natural consequence of the Tawhidi worldview, where you believe in one God, the most perfect and absolute being. So, in Islamic worldview, your true value as a person is based on your connection with Allah and how much taqwa you have. But if you change your worldview and a person starts believing in a materialistic worldview whereby there's no God, there's no metaphysics, there's no spirituality, what you enjoy is just this material world, taqwa doesn't really make any sense. Really, right? So a person who believes that his sole aim in this life is to enjoy and benefit as much as you can, of course, as long as you don't trample on other people's pleasure. So there is that contract between different people that, look, my aim is to maximize my enjoyment as long as I don't trouble you. So that agreement is there. Yes. In that setting, taqwa makes no sense. Why should I have taqwa? Let's say I can do anything inside my closed doors without harming others. Any sin I can commit, and it's enjoyable to commit that sin, why shouldn't I? If my worldview is not based on Tawheed. So, this example I'm just giving to show how closely values are connected to the worldview. And if you change the worldview, the values change. Okay, I don't have time, I'm rushing a bit. Islamic social systems, and believe me, this is a very, very long story. And we don't have a lot of knowledge and information about it. It's a topic that's rarely spoken about. Why? Because in today's modern world, except for maybe one or two places, Islam hasn't got an opportunity to implement its social systems. It's in the sidelines in terms of the social systems. And of course, there are reasons for it, that why is that state. But Islam has a system of governance. It has a political system. I'm just giving you these keywords. So imamat, the system of imamat is the Islam's political system. Of course, what does it mean in today's world is a different story. Islam has a system of law. I mean, you look at the comprehensive nature of Islamic laws. These laws are there for the society, right? Why? Because Islamic laws are not limited to individual matters. Islam has laws from individual matters to social matters. I mean, those who have studied fiqh and Islamic jurisprudence, they know that the topics that are discussed in Islamic law range from individual matters like prayers and fasting to family matters like marriage and children, and you go to social matters like the dispute resolution and inheritance of course is a family matter, and war and peace. So many different things that Islam comes and speaks about. Islamic system of education, I pose this question, right, that how would Islamic system of education would look? How did the Holy Prophet run the system of education when he formed government in Medina? Or, for example, let's remember the Imam Ali's system of implementing justice. It was something magnificent that we saw, that justice would be delivered as much as possible in his government. So, all these things are there. Okay, I'm going to just give you one example of, you might wonder that how Islamic systems are going to be any different from the systems that we have today. Look, the modern world in which we live today is so dominant in all aspects of our life that thinking beyond that can be very, very difficult. We might seem that, oh, this is the end of it. The way the world is running, the way the systems are running today is the best thing you can ever imagine. That's the problem. Sometimes we are not able to see beyond what's surrounding us. And it's not easy. It's like fish in the water. When the fish is in the water, it's very hard to realize that, look, it's water all around. And it's difficult to even imagine that there can be air somewhere. No, the fish always think that it has to be water everywhere. So for us, it can happen. But let me give you this example and show you that Islamic systems, if they would be implemented in the society, might look completely or drastically different from what we see in today's world. So I'm just going to give you one example. So one of the Islamic values, I'm giving you an example of an economic system, that how Islamic economy or economics would look like. So it's all based on Islamic values and Islamic goals. So one of the Islamic values is that fair distribution of wealth is good. It's something desirable, it's something which should be there in the society. And as opposed to that, concentration of wealth in hands of few rich is bad in Islam. It's very, very detested that only a few people, because they're already rich, because they're already powerful, they become richer and richer. And I'm sure at least most of you, or many of you, know that in today's modern world, this is what we see, that majority of the wealth is concentrated in the hands of wealthy few. And what's ironic is that in this time of this pandemic, where a lot of people are suffering economic problems because no jobs, no employment, and people have gone deeper into poverty, the top and the most richest people have made big gains in terms of their wealth. So you can go and type on the internet. I was reading a report that the six most richest people in United States during this pandemic have added a few $1 billion to their wealth through different means, through the rise in the value of their shares and many, many different things that happen. So the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. Islam says this is not accepted. Islam doesn't like it. Islam tells Muslims that you should detest this state in your society. You should hate it. You should dislike it. That why is this the state? And on the other hand, you should like fair distribution in the society. So this is at the level of values. But values, if they just stay in heart, they don't bring about any change in the society. Values can only bring about a change in society when these values are reflected in how our societies function in the social system. So, look, on one hand, Islam says that fair distribution of wealth is good. In order to strengthen this value, it says that in Islamic banking system, interest, riba, is haram. And again, there's a long story that how much, and today we know that today's world system runs on this riba and interest, and it's very, very clearly forbidden in the Holy Quran. Why? Because again, I won't have time. It will require a bit of explanation, but you can, if I had another time, I would explain it in more detail. That interest and riba, whereby you can loan someone a certain amount of money, you don't take any risk in work he's doing. You sit behind because you have capital and you're rich, and you say that I don't care what happens to that money I'm giving you as loan. You might fail in your business, coronavirus might come, you might lose your money. I don't care, I need my interest back. So I'm not becoming a partner in your risk. Why? Because I have the capital, I'm the boss here, and I need my money back. What it does, this system of interest, system of banking based on interest, is that it makes those people who own a lot of capital stronger. They don't become partners in risk. The risk completely goes to the other side who's taking the money, who's taking the loan. And again, there's a long story, but Islam forbids riba. Why? Because it wants equal distribution in the society. So I'm just giving you a glimpse of how Islamic systems would look in the society, and it's a very, very long story. I can give you many examples. So Shaykh Bakir Usad wrote this book called Iqtisaduna, explaining how Islamic economics would look like. And there are other scholars who have worked in the past, and a lot of work today is going on in the different houses trying to develop different Islamic systems. So, long story short, let me summarize what I'm trying to say. My time is running out quickly. That is that we have Islamic worldview, we have Islamic values, we have social systems to run the society, and we can create a lot of attractions based on Islam. Really, if we would start implementing Islam on a social scale, and if we are able to show the beauty of Islam to others, and again, I said as a social scale, but even as an individual, if in my individual life I'm able to implement Islam and show that beauty to others, believe me, they'll be attracted. And I have put some examples of what those different attractions can be. And believe me, people are attracted. Go and read stories of these converts, okay, like those people who are not Muslims and then they become Muslims. Many of them do not become Muslims because, in the first place, they like the Islamic worldview. No, that comes later. The first thing is something attracted them. Somebody's good akhlaq attracted them. They looked at a role model and that attracted them. Someone read about Imam Ali and he was absolutely inspired and he was attracted. Somebody got some benefit from some Islamic system. For example, someone benefited from the sadaqah that the Mu'minin gave, or the welfare system that the Mu'minin have established. He was attracted to Islam. Maybe he was attracted by hijab. Maybe he was attracted by Quran. So we can create a lot of attractions wherever we are, and slowly and gradually bring people towards their true identity, inshallah. So this was a second part of my discussion, where basically what I was trying to present and show is that really, 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 as Muslims, we should go back and look at our own Islam, the Holy Quran, the narrations that we have from the Ahlul Bayt. There's a lot of things going on there. Islam has the potential and the capacity to run societies, to run the entire humanity. And again, when you go back to the verses of the Quran have claimed such a thing clearly. So I mentioned a few, that Islam came when the Holy Prophet brought it with a global claim, said that it's the final religion and it's something that's sufficient to run the global society. Of course, how that is going to happen, are we close to that? Are we far from that? Why haven't we made big strides in it? Are there places in the world where these things are being tried out? Inshallah, we'll keep it for another discussion. Of course, I won't have a chance for another discussions because this is my last course. But who knows? Maybe in another setting, we bump into each other, and then maybe that would be the place to discuss. So that was second part of my discussion. Uh, Let me come very quickly to the last part, and this would be the practical part of my discussion. I still have 40 minutes. Of course, these 90-minute sessions are really, really, really long. And in today's world, it's very difficult to even sit and listen to someone for 30, 40 minutes, let alone for long 90 minutes. So what I'm going to do right now here is that I'm going to take like a 2 3 minute break, or let's say 5 minute break. That's even better. So what you can do is you can relax. You can, if you want, have a go and grab a cup of chai, coffee, whatever you like. And if someone wants to ask a question regarding what you've discussed so far, they can ask and they can type. Or generally, if there are any comments that you want to make, because it would be good to have a two-way communication, because I have no idea where do you come from, which part of the world you are there. Inshallah, you are there and listening to me. It's very difficult in this online setting, so it would be good to have some comments and some things said on the chat. So we'll take a few minutes break. So nothing, I'm just here, I'm sitting here, I'll be looking at the chat box, and if you want, you can take a small break. We'll start in like few minutes, so please don't go. Don't go away. Our discussion is still continuing. Don't think it's over. So inshallah, few minutes, 3 4 minutes, inshallah. In the meantime, you can recite a salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Please do make any comments if you have. I'll be happy if there's any questions, comments that you would like to make. We still have 2 minutes, and inshallah, we'll continue. Yes, I'm just reading the comments that are being made here on the in the chat box. Is definitely this is how it is. Uh, if you're even a slightly careful in observing, you'll very like clearly see these changes happening. That especially the I mentioned last time, the generation that has never seen the East, and that was from the beginning brought up in the modern world, in the modern setting. So right from their childhood they're surrounded by these attractions and these ways of thinking and these values. And I'm sure definitely you can observe, as was said, that they're struggling with their identity. uh, they become withdrawn, they go away from you, they start doing strange things, they're torn apart, they're torn between different identities. They can't come up with a wholesome identity where they can combine Islam in their identity and be confident Muslims, even in an adverse environment. Why? Because it's that thing is lacking from inside. If someone's identity is not built from inside, you can't label him from outside. It's very difficult. So yeah, definitely this is a challenge. And but the bright side is that there's a lot we can do. And as Islamic teachings tell us that the verse of the Holy Quran, inna ma'al usra yusra. So this is very beautiful, that this verse is not saying that after difficulty there's ease. The Mufassirin say that it's trying to say that no, with difficulty there is ease, which means that in every difficulty, if you are careful and if you think carefully, there's an opportunity. There's a way to find ease. And that's what we need to do today. In all these difficulties that are there, challenges that we have, each challenge gives you a unique opportunity, and maybe something that no one else will get, to get closer to Allah, to deal with it, to resist, to fight back for our right, the right to get closer to Allah. That's the most fundamental right we have, right? We are human beings. We are sent here to get closer to Allah, to become spiritual beings. So we need to fight for that right. And inshallah, that's something that we can do. And yes, all these challenges you'll face, that when you're surrounded by a society which is not in line with the Islamic identity, the youth are going to do this. They're going to change Islam to fit into that regular framework. And it's happening today, both at the ideological and intellectual level. And I'm sure you're aware that there these people, these new kinds of thoughts, where you cut everything from Islam and then somehow try to fit it with the today's modern ideological framework. Then on the practical side also, everything halal, everything haram slowly starts becoming halal. The boundaries are omitted. Yes, it's something which you're going to face, but inshallah, it's something that we'll have uh, to manage. Yes. So I don't recall which book I mentioned, but yes, if it's a book that has been found, then yeah, definitely the organizers can share with the thing. Yeah. So yes, humanism is something that we need to talk about and we need to tackle. So when I said Tawheed and belief in one God, it goes against. It doesn't come very well in line with. Yeah, so this is the book. So I was just making a mention of, it's translated in English also. So this is a compilation of narrations that we have from the Ahlul Bayt just about upbringing children. So this was a work by Darul Hadith here, and then it was translated in English, and you can see that Sheikh is holding the book in his hand, and there are like more than 1,000, and of course there are more narrations in other books. So once I had checked, that maybe more than 3,000 narrations just about a child upbringing. So we have a lot of rich Islamic heritage which we can really use to solve our own problems and even problems of others, even non-Muslims in our society. uh, so I was speaking about this thing of a tawheed, or belief in one God. And but the dominant civilization has believes in this idea called humanism. So again, I mentioned that this discussion is not about the ideology of the modern world. It's a topic that we need to talk about, that what is the worldview of the modern world, how does it look at the world. And maybe you will realize then that it looks at the world very differently from us. And that their idea or their perception about the world, we can call it as humanism. Of course, there's a lot of detail to it. If we get a chance, we'll speak about it. So let me come back. So that's end of my break. Thank you for your comments. Uh, it's very encouraging for me that you are like giving these comments and these questions. And inshallah, for me at least, it's something, and I'm sure for all of you, it's something, it's a very, very important discussion that we need to have. We need to go into the details and see how we can deal with this idea of protecting and strengthening our identity as Muslims, as believers, as servants of God, inshallah, even in the most difficult of circumstances. So let me come to some practical points, because I've been speaking about that all of this is towards practical point. I have less time left, but inshallah, I should be able to cover the main points. Again, let me make a disclaimer here that these practical points are very good and useful, but they won't be the most detailed and most specific things. For more specific things, we need to go into that specific matter. So, inshallah, these would be some key points that would open ways for you. But it's not the answer that will finish here. You'll have to pursue some of these things to get to those very specific, detailed answers that you might need in your personal or community life. So let's start with the solution. So when you're facing a problem or a challenge, you need to have a comprehensive strategy. So we are trying to describe what's the problem and what's the challenge we are facing in the modern world. We need a twofold strategy. On one side, we need defense. We should be able to protect ourselves. We should be able to save our identity from destructive impact of outside forces. But that's not enough. And sometimes I feel that this is something we always are on back foot, especially if you're in the modern world. And I'm assuming that most of you are from those Western societies. You can I don't want to like use words that these are just words for reference. So in your societies, and usually people living in the West, when these kind of discussions are mentioned, automatically people just start focusing on the defense strategies. Oh, how do I save my children? How do I protect them? This is happening. This challenge is coming. How am I going to save myself? Yes, definitely we need to save ourselves and need to have a defense strategy. But at the same time, we should also have a positive and how would I say, an active society. Sometimes we become very apologetic. We are on back foot. So it's like the other side is attacking us, is bashing us, is, I don't know what word to use, and we're just saying that, oh, please stop, 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 let us don't I need to save myself. Yeah, we need to save ourselves, but we also have a lot of positive contribution to make. It's not only about defense. It's about, if that's the right word to use, it's about offense. You can criticize the modern world. It's not about the only thing that they criticize you, they attack you, they attack your ideology, they attack your beliefs, they attack your lifestyle, and then you protect. No, we also have the right to criticize the problematic things that are there in that society and offer Islamic solutions to them. We should be confident. And this is a very, very important part in our Islamic identity, that when you're living in the modern world, we should live as confident Muslims who can make positive contribution to the society based on Islam. And that's something that can definitely be done. Why? Because always being on the back foot and being dominated and apologetic is not a good state to be in. Why? Because eventually you lose. Why? Because the odds are too strong. There are 10 things attacking you and you're just saving yourself. No, if you're being attacked from 10 fronts, you should also have a positive contribution to make. So I'm going to divide my practical solutions into these two things, and both are equally important in their own places. So, what's a defense strategy? The defense. I'm going to quickly go through it. And again, I mentioned these are just pointers to solutions. The actual things you'll have to actually follow it. First defense strategy is to raise awareness. Believe me, we don't have awareness of the modern world in which we live. We need to speak about it. We need to have sessions about it. We need to read about it. We need to know what's going on in the society. And sometimes I feel, unfortunately, it's lacking. Like, let me read this list for you: history of the modern world, a critical history of the modern world. How many of us have read one book on a critical history of the modern world? That where did it start? Why is the world the way it is today? It's built in history, right? Our present is built in our past. So we need to know the history of the modern world. You need to know history of your own country, whichever country you live in. I'm from India. I need to know India's history. Why does India look the way it is today? Why the problems that we have that are there? If you're living in UK, in Britain, you need to know British history. Of course, I'm not saying have a very detailed hundreds of books. No, a few critical books that give you a good view. What was colonialism? That the Britain, it wreaked havoc in the world. It led to deaths of millions of people. It destroyed India and other places. It's part of British history. If you're living in Britain, you need to know this, and other parts. You might have these questions, right? Like, how comes in today's modern world where liberal democracy is the common political system, you still have a monarch or a queen in your system? Why? How does it sustain? It's a puzzle, right? The answer lies in the historical background. So we need to understand the history and also the modern world today. How does the world function? How does the economy function today? Why do we have so much poverty today? How is it that these rich people, they become rich every single day? I mean, I don't want to mention these names, but these are the people, right? Who are there from Elon Musk to the Amazon chief Jeff Bezos. They've added billions of dollars when everyone is suffering economically. How and why? There's a lot to read and know, and this session itself is an attempt and is part of this venture to raise our knowledge and awareness. And I want to read this hadith. This is from Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. He says, al alimu bi zamanihi. If you are alim with respect to your times, so he's not talking about ilm of the Quran. No, he's talking about knowing your times, your society, your community. If you know your times and you know your society, la tahjumu alayhi lawabis. Mistakes won't attack him from all sides. So the opposite also true, right? That if I don't know what's happening in my society, I'm going to be surrounded by mistakes. Believe me, that's going to happen. So, first defense strategy is we need to raise awareness. We need to read, and learn many different things about the modern world. So, for example, this thing I mentioned, ideology of the modern world, we need to know it. Like, what is their worldview? We need to understand because you live in that society. You need to understand why your social system looks a certain way. The roots go back to the worldview. So these are different topics that we need to speak. Another important thing, a defense strategy, is to understand the relationship between the modern world and Islam. And this thing, of course, will need a lot of time. As I mentioned, each of these things are pointers, and some of these things would need a lot of discussion, like a few courses to go into it. So this is an important question, right? Because see, on one side we are Muslims, in another side we are citizens of a certain country, and that's perfectly fine. It's your country, it's your place. You have every right to follow your religion there and live as proud citizens, as followers of Islam. But eventually, we need to know that what's the ultimate relationship between these two ways of life. Are they completely? I mean, these are the problems, right? Sometimes some people, in order to make themselves in line with the modern world, they're ready to undo with a lot of Islam. It doesn't work like that. So again, I have drawn this diagram, but again, there's little time to explain. So this shows the relationship between modern world and Islam. You go down, there are common points. In social systems, you'll find common things between Islam and modern world. You go to values, the commonalities, they decrease a bit. You go to beliefs, the commonalities, belief means worldview. Our worldview and their worldview starts diverging from each other, and the ultimate destination becomes completely different. If someone completely 100% gives his heart to the modern world, its worldview and its values and its social system, 100% completely, then this person would end up as someone who doesn't believe in God, doesn't believe in any religion. uh, he would say that his main aim is to live just a successful material life. This aim is very different from what Islam tells us. Islam tells us that look, you're not just material, you have a spiritual side. There is God, there's duties, we are servants of Allah, there's a paradise, there's hereafter. So, in terms of ultimate destination, we diverge from each other. We need to know this and understand this. In detail, at least in some detail. So, this is another defense strategy that will keep us more alert that everything that comes from the modern world will have to be careful that does it match with our values, our beliefs, our goals? Yes, we take it. If not, we'll have to deal with it, we'll have to manage it. The third thing, which is a continuation of the same second thing, is that benefit from the positives of the modern world. And I mentioned this last time that when we are even criticizing the modern world, we definitely say that it has positives that we can benefit from. No society can rise to prominence with 100% negatives. In fact, when Batil wants to succeed, it brings some haq with it. That's how it is. So I'm definitely not saying that the modern world is all dark and all negative. No, there's a lot of positive, but we need to protect ourselves from the negative influence. That's our strategy. So we need to completely make a separation. So you look at something positive, benefit from it. Why? Because even that positive is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Yes, they have produced it, but with Allah's power that Allah gave them. So eventually it's a blessing of Allah. But if you see something negative in the modern world, if you see nasty things like, again, I don't want to take these names, but very, very dangerous things like drug addiction to pornography to so many nasty things that are going on, we need to be scared of these things. She said, no, 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 these are not things that I can even go close to or let my children go close to or my community go close to. So we need to have this understanding of making separation between positives and negatives. You benefit from the positives and stay away from the negatives. Again, I mentioned maybe you won't find specific solutions here. Why? Because each of these are specific topics we need to discuss separately. You point to me a one negative influence, we need to discuss that. Drug addiction, if it's a problem, yes, we need to focus on it, we need to solve it for our communities. So that was a few points about defense strategy. I still have 21 minutes and I have a few slides to cover this. So I should be able to cover this in 10 minutes. And then inshallah, I'll leave last 10 minutes for your questions and comments, inshallah. So for me personally, I think that this positive contribution is even more important than your defense strategy. Why? Because if you have this proactive stance and positive contribution, it's also going to help you in your defense strategy. See, if you just keep defending, eventually you're going to lose. But with defense, you also have an offensive strategy. If you also have a forward strategy, if you make a forward step in one area, that success in one area is going to make you stronger in your defense part. It's very, very important. And I feel this thing gets neglected sometimes, that we think that, oh, we only need to be defensive and just be saving ourselves. No, that you do, we can make a lot of positive contribution to the society as well. So what could be those things that we can do positive contribution in? And again, these are general things. For specific details, we need another setting. So let's look at some of the positive contributions that we can make. But before I go to the positive contributions we can make, we need to build the right identity in our societies. So, this thing which I mentioned about having a positive strategy, it's to do with your identity. If you just base your identity on defense, it's not going to work out. So, as Muslims living in the West or in the modern world, we need to imagine and create a new Shia Muslim identity which is suitable to your country and your ethnic background. Again, you might be thinking, like, what is this talking about? Again, I won't have time to explain what I mean. These are some of the words I'm trying to express my thoughts. Uh, because it's not a technical discussion on identity. I'm not going into the technical details. What I'm trying to say briefly is that whichever country you live in, for example, you live in UK, you live in Canada, that country has its own dynamics, right? And you're not separate from that country. Likewise, you come from a certain ethnic Eastern background, and there's so many labels and tags and identities attached to you, right? You might be a Khoja, you might be a Sayyid, you might be a Mirza, you might be from a certain community in Pakistan, you might be a Hazara, you might be an Iranian, you might be an Arab. So these are other identity labels that are attached to us, right? We can't get rid of them. If I'm a Khoja, I'm a Khoja. It means it's part of my identity. Again, the question is how much of it I should keep, how much of I should let go of it. Right now, I won't delve into that. But what I'm trying to say that we need to define a confident Shia Muslim identity which is localized for our country and that keeps into account our ethnic background as well. I think I couldn't have made it more complex than that. But this was a side point which I just wanted to emphasize that if our identity is carefully and properly defined and we are confident in the way we conduct ourselves as Muslims, we have our guard and defense, but we are confident, we are aware of our rights, we can make contribution to the society that can take us forward and they can take us a long way. So let me go forward. What's a positive strategy? Positive contribution. Point number one is to strengthen our Islamic worldview and Islamic knowledge. Believe me, if you strengthen your worldview and generally Islamic knowledge, it will give you a lot of confidence when it comes to dealing with these problems. You'll be in control. Why? Because you'll know the solutions, because you'll be faced with very complex situations. But if you have the right Islamic knowledge, you'll never be overwhelmed intellectually. And that's important, right? We need to have this positive part in our personality that we are very strong in terms of our worldview and iman. If any intellectual doubt comes, so you're seeing this today, right? There are doubts being raised from different sides on different things. On ahkam, if I'm Islamically aware, I'll be confident. Oh, this doubt, I know the answer. Oh, these people, they're coming from this line of attack. I know the answer. So we need to upgrade, inshallah, our Islamic knowledge and worldview. And there's so much to learn when it comes to Islam. Islam speaks about so many different themes. It talks about God in detail. And it's really, really beautiful to go into the details of Islamic perception and conception of God. It's really amazing. Just this Dua Joshan al Kabir, 1,000 names of Allah. So amazing. Look at the other duas, the other ahadith. Quran itself, it talks about insan, it talks about the samawat and the earth, it talks about human society, it talks about the prophets and the anbiya and the sirat al-mustaqim, it talks about the hereafter, it talks about so many different things. So if we work on this, then we'll be stronger and we'll be more confident in dealing with these problems. What other positive contribution that we can make? And that will really will make us strong wherever we are, and this is really important. And again, it's for all of us. I say this to myself before I say this to anyone else, and that is that we need to experience Islam. Sometimes what happens is, and I say this to myself, that sometimes I know a lot about Islam, I know a lot about Tawheed, I know a lot about God, but these realities, I'm not experiencing them. I'm not living Islam. I'm not a embodiment of Islam in my society. Islam is in my mind as concepts. Islam is my library in terms of books. But if you see my life, if you see this person's life, you see very weak traces of Islam. Okay, if that's a state of a moment in such a difficult environment, then he won't be able to shine as a light. He won't be able to like cause that impact in that society. Of course, it's easier said than done. But all of us in our own places and in own circles, if we act upon Islam, so leave those discussions and doubts and everything aside. We know what Allah has asked from us, the duties that we have to do. If I act upon Islam, if I try to be spiritual truly, and I do my duty, slowly and gradually, Allah will put that light in my life. I'll be able to experience realities of Islam, that beautiful connection with Allah. Then not only you will have nur in your heart, this nur will spread to others. And this can be my positive contribution. You can be a, a muballigh of Islam, inviting others towards Islam just by being in that society. It's possible. If I'm living Tawheed, if I'm experiencing Islam, other people are going to see that nur and they're going to be attracted. So this is something that can be, and this is something which we can do. We can teach our children, we can encourage our communities that we need to act, need to do amal. We can't be stuck in this endless cycle of trying to answer doubts, or does God exist or not. Yes, those are important. We need to answer them. But once the answers are given, Bismillah, come, let's start acting on Islam. And this can attract not only other believers but also non-Muslims. If my akhlaq is completely Islamic, if my worldview is completely Tawheedi, if in my actions I'm just, I'm honorable, I'm spiritual, believe me, it's going to attract a lot of people around us, inshallah. So this is another positive contribution that we can make. The third point, I have 3 minutes, inshallah, I should be able to cover, is even in your small surroundings, you can create Islamic attractions, even if it's a small step. So I gave I mentioned, I showed you a long list of Islamic attractions. So there's a lot in Islam that can attract others. So imagine that the believers in the different communities, they get together and they make a positive contribution to their society by establishing and slowly and gradually implementing Islamic social systems which will benefit not only Muslims but even the non-Muslims. Again, the examples can be so many. So, I mean, we spoke about the idea of tarbiyat of children, right? Child upbringing, and Sheikh Hasnain showed us that book which I had mentioned. Imagine you take those Islamic principles, you understand it well, you read and you study them well, and you remove Islam's name from it and give it to others, propagate it for others. So, for example, Islam says that one of the foundations of tarbiyah and child upbringing is love. The main characteristic and factor and the catalyst for tarbiyah is love. So this we understand from the verses of the Quran from Ahlul Bayt. You remove their name, give it to the society. Believe me, people will come running to us if we do that. And again, this is, I'm sure you must have heard this narration from Imam al-Rida, right? That if people would know the beauty of our words, they would follow us. So this is what we need to do. We take the words of the Ahlul Bayt and the Quran, their teachings, even if it needed, remove their name. We don't have to say it's from words of the Quran. We don't have to say it's from the Ahlul Bayt in whom we believe. No, remove references to them if the need is such. Present those solutions to them. So, for example, if believers manage to establish an interest-free bank that can truly, truly make a positive contribution to the society, people will be attracted. Why not? If the believers are able to come up with a social support system, with a system to support and boost spirituality, even for non-Muslims, we can create a lot of attraction, and it will give us a lot of confidence as Muslims living in those societies. Okay, I think I've been speaking a lot. The last thing that I want to mention is that when you're doing all this in your society, definitely keep an eye on the Muslim world. Okay, because as Muslims living in any society, we are not detached from other Muslims, right? They are our brothers in faith. In general, we are not detached from humanity in general. So generally, as human beings, we should be aware of what's happening to other human beings generally around the world. But as Muslims, we have special attachment to the other Muslims around the world. So we should be aware of what's happening around the world, especially what's happening to Muslims. Again, there's so many things that are happening. The recent happenings were the Palestinian issue. There's things happening in Yemen. There's things happening in different. I mean, each has a story of its own. At least briefly, we need to be aware. And inshallah, there are good things happening also in the Islamic world. There are things that we can learn from, take inspiration from, and a mu'min is like that. That wherever he is able to get benefit, he takes benefit. And inshallah, the final thing that we have in our mind, and that gives us a lot of hope, is that we need to be doing constant efforts, inshallah, till the zuhur of our last Imam, Imam Zaman, Ajallallahu Ta'ala, Farajahu Sharif, because we know he's definitely going to come. This is Allah's promise in the Quran, in the Torah, in the divine books. It's an undeniable thing that's going to happen. That a savior is going to come, who's going to save the entire humanity. Is going to end humanity's suffering. That we know is definitely happening. So imagine, that hope is there. That the pinnacle and peak of humanity is going to come. So I need to be constantly striving in my society, in my locality, wherever I am, whatever situation it is, whatever resources I have, I'm constantly striving, inshallah, with the hope that I'm chosen as one of his helpers. And that's a great distinction that any human being can get, that Allah chooses him to be one of the Ansar and the helpers of the Imam of the time, inshallah. So, with that, I end my presentation. I really, really thank you for your time. That was a very long presentation. It's hard to sit for 90 minutes and listen. I have 8 minutes left. I tried to cover different points I had in mind. Of course, there are so many topics that we could have discussed more. I can see some very good comments here. So I have around 7 minutes in which we can have any questions and comments you may have. So please do type them. If there's any questions, then I can try and answer them. So we stop here. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So yes, so if so, one of the sisters have mentioned that yes, if there is an opportunity and if there is need, then yes, I can try to um, do the same presentation if there's any other service I can do. So inshallah, I'll share my contact details. So if people have any questions, also they can ask. And if there's any other service, I would try my best to do it. There's a lot of books about many of these topics that are there. Right now, I don't have them compiled in one place. So I don't know, maybe I'm sharing my number here. So if anyone is interested, they can send me a message on WhatsApp. I'll try to share some of the resources, both about the history of the modern world. There are a few very good and interesting books. And believe me, history, especially some of these history books, are really interesting. I mean, once you start reading, then you can't stop. There's so much interesting detail in that, and it's definitely a worthwhile pursuit to go into a bit of history. Of course, those things which are relevant. So I'll share my number, and then maybe I can suggest. Yeah. So there's some other things, some books that have been mentioned here. So there's a book. That the name has been mentioned here. Yes, so British colonialism recently, especially, there have been some very good and critical books that have been written. One, the name is mentioned here. There's another book called The Late Victorian Holocausts, which is a very good book which talks about a specific theme of British colonialism. There's another book, I just forgot the name, it slipped out of mind, by an Indian member of parliament named Shashi Tharoor. He's written recently about the British colonialism in India and how it destroyed it. So I think some of these books are definitely something which we can like read and find time. Okay. So I was just reading the comments. I still have 5 minutes to go. So please, if there are any questions or comments that you would like to make, please do so. Yeah, so I've shared my number. So if there's anything, then yeah. So creating a local Islamic identity seems difficult. So yes, in one sense, it's difficult because it's a topic that hasn't been worked upon or hasn't been discussed a lot. So what I was trying to say was that we need to. You use the word local. What I had in mind is that given the fact that today we live in nation states, so the way our countries are divided, that different nation states, each one has a set of laws, political boundaries, similar systems, right? When you live in a country, you have to go by its political system, its economic system, its educational system. So the idea would be, of course, it will require a bit of work uh, and we'll need scholarly guidance in that. It's not something that's easily done. But if you, let's say you can create, so just for an example, like you live in, let's say, UK, Britain. So you say we need to imagine British Islamic identity. How would it look like? Something which would have that Islamic element in it, Islam as a way of life, as a civilization, a confident Islamic identity. But that identity has to be local also. It has to be British in that sense that it's based in Britain, it wants to make contributions to Britain, it's concerned about Britain, it cares for Britain, it makes positive contribution to Britain as a whole. Again, of course, you can have focus on Shias, you can have focus on Muslims, but we can't have exclusive identities where we are completely unconcerned about the larger society. It won't work out. Why? Because you live in a society, you'll have to have interaction with them. So trying to imagine something like, I mean, I'm just saying, using these words, a British Islamic confident identity, of course, an identity that doesn't even ignore the ethnic and other backgrounds. So Islam doesn't say that you have to wipe out those identities. Like we all have those very small identities, right? Our ethnic identities. You come from a certain country, certain ethnic group. You're a Khoja, you're a Sayyid, even you're a convert. So that also comes with an identity, right? So these are those small sub identities. Islam doesn't say that you completely obliterate them and remove them, but it doesn't even give them a primary role. So that's a problem we have right now, that people go on two extremes. Some people say that, oh, remove these secondary identities, let's just do away with these identities. Some people say that, no, these are our primary identities. No, it's none of the two. So those identities have their place. Islamic identity has its place, but that British local element also has to be there, because when you're living in a country, we'll have to be in touch with the happenings of that country. We need to make positive contribution to that society as well. Of course, I'm trying to make it very brief, but how would that Islamic identity look like? It will need a bit of discussion. What would be its elements and how it should be developed and engineered? It's something which we can slowly and gradually do and work upon. Yeah, so the name of the book about children, if I can find it right now, I can share. It's called Children in Hadith. Yeah, if I can find. Yeah, so it's called Children in Islam. I found its PDF. Is that the one? No, it's not the one. Sorry. So let me try and find. So if I find, inshallah, I'll share. If the sister, yeah, it's there. I found it. It's called Children in the Quran and the Sunnah. It's there on Al Islam. Let me post the link here. I found it. So this is the book. Yeah. So this is the book. It's called Children in the Quran and the Sunnah, and I posted the link. It's there on Al Islam. So it's a wonderful book. But again, just a caution and disclaimer about books that are compilation of hadith is that it's good to go through these and read these ahadith, but you might need scholarly guidance and complementary reading, because it's not easy to just go through ahadith and derive your own conclusions and start acting upon them. Yes, it's good, go through these ahadiths, you'll get acquainted with the different themes and topics being discussed. But if you want to take practical steps, it's definitely better to have some scholarly guidance, have go through the books written by scholars who have extracted the Islamic tarbiyah system based on these ahadiths. It's not so simply done. There's a lot of expertise that goes into it. So there's another question. In the meantime, while this is being developed, what can we do for other communities? Sometimes it seems like the parents are not confident in their Islamic identity. Oftentimes, the parents held on to a cultural identity more than Islamic. But since their children are not from that culture, kids, yeah. So definitely, we can do a lot for other communities. I gave some examples on economic sides. You can do. You can start. I mean, from big projects like interest-free banking to smaller projects like you have a system of organizing sadaqah to teaching, giving them the Islamic teachings about tarbiyah, contribution to society can have many, many, many examples. But as a priority, we need to even work on our own people, our own parents. Yes, we'll have to slowly build that Islamic confidence in them, that look, Islam is that religion that has a lot of depth to it. It's We can be in that society and we can be confident Muslims. We don't need to hide our identity. Of course, if there are doubts regarding our identity, if you are branded as something, you need to clear those doubts. No one is denying that we shouldn't defend, but it shouldn't be. We should be confident. How do we develop confidence? Of course, we'll have to discuss what are the practical ways. And yes, we need to strike a balance between the cultural identity and Islamic identity. Cultural identity shouldn't become primary. And as it was mentioned, and this is what's happening, that because the parents, because they have lived in the East, a good number of them, and then they have come to the West, they carry that cultural identity, and that might become sometimes dominant, while the children, they don't have attachment to that cultural identity, or they have less attachment. And if their Islamic identity is also not built, if they lose their cultural identity, uh, you have done a big disservice to them. You left them at the mercy of the modern world. So now neither Islam nor that Eastern culture is going to trying to hold him to anything. Now he's going to rebel, he's going to go against you, he's not in your hands. uh, uh, it's bad to say it like this, but you have lost it. It can happen like that. So we need to benefit from both. We need to strengthen Islamic identity for children, and also cultural identity also has a positive role to play. Yes, I'm not supporting those negative elements of culture, but a good there's a good amount of elements in the Eastern culture that can be positive, because Eastern cultures are, especially if they're Eastern Islamic cultures, they have some good elements. We don't have to discard those positive elements of our culture also. Why should? Yes, we need to be careful. So we need to filter our cultural identities to be able to make them more beneficial and not lose them. So we take maximum benefit both from Islamic identity and from cultural identity, so we can raise these children as confident Muslims who can integrate in their own societies. They value even their Eastern culture, and they come out as confident Muslims who can be like very, very effective even in their own societies, inshallah. So hala, thank you for your time. I mean, I can go on speaking like this. It's already late. I don't know which part of world you are, but at least here it's 9 p.m. and it's been a long 1.5 hours. So thank you for your time, and inshallah I've shared my number. If there's anything else that if possible for me to do, then inshallah it will be a pleasure. Thank you again, and I want to extend my thanks to the organizers for availing this platform and organizing these kind of sessions, which inshallah will serve to strengthen our Islamic identity. And inshallah, the ultimate aim is that we all get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He blesses us with His paradise and the choicest of His blessings. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.